We're building something that's used by 60,000 websites over the world.
Press releases are being super lightly post-edited machine translation now.
A lot of the translation has actually been copied from a fan-made translation, which is known as scanlation.
And welcome everyone to SlaterPod. Hi there, Esther.
Hey, Florian.
Today we're speaking to Augustin Pro, co-founder and CEO of Weglot, a fast-growing web localization technology company based in Paris, France. Very good discussion, very interesting discussion. Learned a lot about weblog, so do stay tuned. Esther, today is an exciting day for us. We're launching our 2022 market report. We briefly teased it last time, and today's the day.
Yes, exciting.
We do record this on a Thursday, so by the time you're listening to this, it should be on our website. Yay! But before we go there, let's go through a few kind of AI machine translation bullet points, and then we go over and talk to Augustin. So Google's huge new language model answers questions, does other stuff, and we'll try to give you, the key bullet points there, although it's a huge paper and it's a huge launch. Then, Esther, you're going to talk about scanlation.
Yes.
And issues in the anime translation world.
I will.
And then we're going to close on Ayuna buying another company. And then there is a surprising post-editing machine translation plot twist for you listeners. All right. So, hey, this week in AI news is that AI draws and AI writes and AI answers questions and, obviously helps us with translations and all of that. But let's dwell on the drawing point. Did you see all those weird AI drawings by some new model that just came out this week?
I didn't, but I hadn't, and now I have. But they look very interesting and colorful.
They're kind of weird, scary, and so there's this model, I forgot the name, and we're not going to talk about that, but it's just, so basically on Twitter, all of a sudden it blew up, like in the last few days, about just breakthroughs in AI, and of course one of them was language, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but the other one was another model that's doing like, that draws, right, or whatever the appropriate term is, so you can say like paint, the one I remember from this morning was like, what was it? Rabbit on a bench in Victorian times reading a newspaper or something. And then, the model drew that rabbit on a bench, Victorian style, reading a newspaper. But there was all these weird things on it. So check it out.
I wonder if all of the, illustrators are, getting nervous that they're going to be replaced by machines, or whether there's some kind of post-editing style workflow to be found in illustration.
100%. Super interesting point. Go on Twitter. The exact same discussion as in language. It was literally, there was the predictable, the illustration guys are going to be out of work. And then there was the other guy who was like, no. It's a tool. It's a tool for them, right? So there was this exact same dynamics. We've had this debate. We're there. So that's why I keep saying at these presentations, we're doing that. Basically, we're very much ahead of the curve, like when it comes to like humans working together with AI. Because for the illustration people, this is breaking right now. So, cool. So on the AI writes and answers questions and translate side, well, it's another one of those big language models. This time, it's got 540 billion parameters for breakthrough performance. That's what the Google blog post says. Now, can I assess if it's breakthrough performance in translation? Absolutely, I cannot. But it does do a lot of things, this new $540 billion parameter models, and one of them is translation. And if you go to their page, to the blog post, it's like a tree that grows. It's hard to describe in a podcast, but like it's a tree that grows, and it has all these little, or all these use cases around it, and at 540 billion parameters, it's doing things like dialogue, pattern recognition, common sense reasoning, logical inference chains, question and answering, semantic parsing, arithmetic, code completion, language understanding. I could go on, and of course, translation. Translation is actually quite a sizable thing there. So this new language model by Google does a lot of stuff. I wonder how the common sense reasoning is there, but it's we're heading towards that bigger AI. We don't have to dive too much into detail. Basically, again, it's a kind of a GPT-3 style iterate. Like it's just a Google version of GPT-3, if I understand this correctly, that does all kinds of kind of AI tasks, and translation is one of them. They parse it in a particular chapter of that 80, 90 page paper they published, and kind of give some blue scores and have a few observations like the results have been particularly impressive when translating into English, but while translating out of English, it yields more lackluster results. We've had this discussion before around these bigger models doing translation tasks, and we were told that it'll probably never be as good as a dedicated model. But it's interesting that these big tech companies continue to release these big models, and probably something we need to be aware of. So before I dig myself further into this hole of ignorance, we should move on to something, but also briefly, that I found super useful recently with, I'm following a lot of the news that's coming out of China. My Chinese is really not fluent enough to read Chinese posts and things like that. And so I used Google Lens a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when you go and or also for what's coming out of Ukraine and Russian, obviously I can't read any of this. You can actually kind of use Google Lens, and even if it's an image, you use Google Lens to kind of OCR and then Google Translate to translate it, and it's quite useful for kind of informational purposes. So Google Lens, something that was, I think, launched like 3-4 years ago, I remember, but now it's coming in quite handy. All right, away from Google, AI, OCR, and big language models to the world of mangas and anime translation. Esther, what happened there? A big scandal / scoop there by Katrina.
Yeah, well, it seems like a big scandal based on scanlation. No, I tried a bit of wordplay there. But as you said, so one of our previous Slater Pod guests, Katrina Leonidakis, she seems to be sort of central to the analysis of this, and kind of was tweeting about it and was quoted in one of some of the coverage. But so the issue seems to be that there's this manga called Ranking of Kings, and it's been the English release of Ranking of Kings has been temporarily suspended because of typos and translation issues. So this is a manga by Sasuke Toka. It's been sort of published in like series or volumes, I think for several years now. But now it's also being serialized in a Comic Beam magazine and published in 12 different volumes. So the English translation is being done, or has been done, and it had been published in 7 different volumes. This is the kind of official version, and it was actually being sold in English for about a month or 2 now, but apparently all of these issues have been found, which now means that these 7 volumes as a minimum are having to be retranslated. So people who've bought the 7 volumes of Ranking of Kings, they can still read it, so they can still have access to it, but they'll also have access to the updated translation. So once the retranslation has been done, I don't know how big 7 volumes of this manga looks like, but it sounds like quite a lot of content anyway to have to redo, not to mention the sort of like public embarrassment of kind of having to admit to some of these issues being in an official released English translation.
What's the issue?
Yeah, so the main issue here is that a lot of the translation has actually been copied from a fan-made translation, which is known as scanlation. So there was, I think often it happens in game localization, it happens in anime, manga, that fans who are sort of like really hardcore into certain certain manga and anime will provide their own version to make it accessible to themselves and to the community. But now obviously the official kind of English translation of the release has been commissioned, and it seems like whoever worked on the official English has copied quite indiscriminately from the Scanlation version. I mean, the article that we were looking at says it's a bit of a legal grey area, because actually fan translations, these like uncommissioned translations, if you like, are themselves a form of piracy. And I mean, the team that did the original uncommissioned Scanlation version didn't work on the official translations at all. So, I mean, it's sort of plagiarism, I guess. And then, so Katrina, who we had on SlatePod a few months ago now, who is localization expert, Japanese to English, like deep expertise in anime, manga. She said, she actually tweeted about this, saying that she spent a few hours analyzing the differences between the official release of Ranking of Kings and the Scanlation, obviously, that came first. And she said 42% of all dialogue in chapters 1 to 3 of the official translation has been directly lifted from the Scanlation. So that was her assessment. I mean, as well as some of this copying, plagiarism, there were also, I think, incorrectly used phrases, mistakes, things like that. So the English distributor and the translation provider have both apologized for a lack of quality and said that these issues might have caused serious damage to the quality of the original work. So they seem to be putting things in place to try and rectify the issues, but obviously a bit embarrassing if it's already been sort of sold and published, being distributed for a couple of months now.
That doesn't happen in many areas where you have fan translation. No one's going to fan translate a financial report.
I was going to say, yeah, an annual report. Like, oh, let me, just for all of those interested investors, let me do you a favor.
Yeah, that doesn't happen anywhere else. Interesting. And I love how this community is so active on Twitter, right? That's why how we came across Katrina in the first place, because this is like almost like public conversations taking place on Twitter, where you have like 200-300 retweets sometimes on like a very kind of seemingly niche issue from an outsider's perspective.
Yeah, there's a lot of passion. I think there's a lot of passion and feeling behind this. Yeah,
I wish we'd get 200-300 retweets per tweet, but we don't. So anyway, follow us on Twitter @Slater News. Now, our friends at Ayuno SDI made an acquisition, not in the log space specifically, but tell us more.
Yeah, so technology investment, really, in a nutshell. But Ayuno SDI said they had acquired a technology provider called Autana Media Group, so based in the UK. It's kind of workflow management. So they say scalable workflow management, asset management, specifically for the media content side of things. Autana helps automate processes and media workflows, and they say reduce operational costs. So yes, it's been acquired by Ayuno SDI. The idea being to integrate Autana's platform. So they've got SaaS and managed service solutions, including, I think, possibly their flagship one called Kubix, but it's going to be, all of that's going to be integrated with Ayuno SDI to form end-to-end supply chain for media and media localization services. So it's quite a small-ish acquisition in the sense that, I mean, seems like they're sort of, 15 to 20 people on LinkedIn. They've got, they are sort of selling around the world. So they've got resellers in Australia, Europe, New Zealand, South Asia, North America, and South America. So they've obviously expanded and done quite well, but in terms of sort of size, relatively small. Company founder James Gibson, also the CEO, is staying on. So Autana is going to be run as a wholly independent subsidy of Ayuno SDI. So James is going to remain CEO. And he will also become the VP of Product and Architecture for Ayuno SDI, reporting into Ayuno Chief Information Officer Alan Dembry. Interesting sort of tech-focused acquisition there for Ayuno SDI.
If I was a German-speaking media localization industry participant sitting in Berlin, and I wanted to learn about this acquisition, I would be alerted by PR Newswire that this happened. from a press release in German published by Ayuno SDI, and I'd read it, and I'd read something that was post-edited using DeepL. So why do I know? Because when we read that article, there is like an option in...
There's like a drop down, isn't there, at the top of the PR Newswire? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a drop down. I went to the German version. I compared the source and then Google Translate and DeepL with the actual published content. And the first sentence is literally word for word MT, so not even a sprinkle of post-edit. Then the second very long sentence, sorry, I'm just talking about one select paragraph because, yeah, obviously I didn't like look at the whole piece. But like one paragraph or one sentence of one paragraph was translated as one sentence as well by Google Translate and DeepL, almost identically, by the way, by Google Translate and DeepL. It's interesting how identical the two MTs are now. The actual published version, though, did realize, like, so there is an post-edit component to it, because like the DeepL version was just super long. Like it was a very long, barely readable sentence. I mean, grammatically correct, but just like super long. So the post-editor, set a period and then just broke the sentences into two. But really interesting that press releases are being like super lightly post-edited machine translation now, right? That I think that's remarkable because, I mean, it is a press release.
But who's paying for that then, Florian? Do you think is it sort of integrated with PR Newswire, or is it the client, i.e. Ayuno SDI, who'd get charged for that, or is it all kind of bundled into the price of publishing a PR?
But I would assume it's bundled. PR Newswire was actually a client of mine. It's like 10 years ago, so I guess I can say that.
At some stage in your life, yeah.
The previous LSP I used to work for, quite competitive rates, and it was. I'm pretty sure it's part of the bundle, and maybe you can order like which languages you want it to be published, but it's probably part of a broader press release bundle. If you're a large company like SDI, so Ayuno SDI is. Just interesting from a text type point of view that press releases are now part of a category that gets the super light post-editing treatment. I find this remarkable because you're reading through the text and it is correct. I mean, the MT is also in a sense correct, but it's like, as a German native speaker, like the English just screams at you below the surface of the German. Like just the way it's phrased is super jargon heavy German, like stuff like highly scalable end-to-end localization supply chain. I mean, yes, you can like convert this into German words, but like, what does it really mean?
I think it's interesting from the perspective of thinking about publishable content and what is publishable content, because obviously press releases are published online, and there you can reference them via URLs for years to come. And, in fact, sometimes we would quote from press releases when we're sort of, digging into the context behind certain things. So they do have a shelf life. They don't vanish entirely. But I suppose they become less relevant after that kind of initial news hits.
Absolutely. Also, it's this whole kind of, then you start scraping the web for parallel content, and you're basically scraping super lightly post-edited content. So it's this kind of machine, and then the AI learns off of it, and it's giving
from the post-edited content,
from the light post-edit. The post-editing was so light. It's literally it's just breaking up one sentence and then making it so it's grammatically still correct after you broke up that sentence, right? That's it. Literally, that's it. There's almost zero. I mean, the edit distance was super small here.
And I suppose what you're saying is if the press release had been drafted in German, it would read quite differently.
Yes. I think so.
It's kind of synthetic in the sense of, well, if you're using it for training MT purposes, you wouldn't want that to be, okay, this is German source content, because it's not really an accurate reflection of German writing for press releases.
100%. Yes. I mean, there's a few of these like German long words that the MT has created that like, I mean, there's no way you would even come up with that word in the first place. But it's not technically like a translation error, but it's just like, it's such a long word that like you read it and you get it, but you're like, yeah, nah, it's not a word that would be in my active vocab, right? Anyway, on that good observation, we shall head over to Augustin and talk about web localization.
Sounds good.
And welcome back, everyone, to SlaterPod. We're really happy to have Augustin Pro here join us. Augustin is the co-founder and CEO of Weglot, a no-code website localization tech provider. And they got people's attention by raising a cool 45 million euro from growth investors recently. So hi, Augustin. Welcome to have you. Happy to have you on the pod.
Hi, Florian and Esther. Really super happy to be there too.
Awesome. Great. Where do you join us from today? What city, what country?
I'm joining you from Biarritz in France. The company is based in Paris, but I live in Biarritz and I do back and forth to Paris.
That's nice. Nice part of the world.
Some good surfing there. We just reminisced before we got online here that I used to spend some time there in the summer. Amazing place. So Augustin, tell us a bit more about your background. Like you were with an investment bank, Lazard, right? And so how did you transition from the investment banking world, to web localization? That must have been quite a twist and a turn.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, when I was in bank, I didn't know anything about translations or web, actually. So I spent 3 years doing merger and acquisitions, and I really enjoyed it. Super intense environment. But at some point, I started to get bored, and I started to not really want to go to the office in the morning. So I thought, okay, it has to change. So I wanted to find a new challenge, and I thought starting a company or joining a company super soon could be the right path for me. And at this time, I started having a couple of ideas in my head and trying to test them, and also meeting a lot of different people who had ideas at this time. And that's when I met Remy, Weglot co-founder and CTO, who had the idea of Weglot, a first user and a first MVP. So when I met him, I didn't know anything about HTML, CSS whatsoever, and not anything also on translations, LSP or anything. But when we had the first conversation together, he explained me how he had the idea, how the challenges he faced as a developer, and that's how I really got into this Weglot adventure.
That's like a kind of business co-founder / technical co-founder combo, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Remy has a engineering background. He did consulting for finance for a couple of years, and then he worked in a web company like real-time bidding, like Criteo, but the US competitor, AppNexus. And then he quit, and he started the first company, which was kind of a classified app with Google Maps, so you could see on your app what people were selling around you or buying around you, and he did that for a year with a friend and co-founder. And after a year, it was super hard to raise money. It was a free premium model, super high competitor in France, so they decided to just shut down the company. But when he shut down the company, he thought about the different challenges he had when he actually did this first entrepreneurial journey. And every time he met a technical challenge, he had a super easy solutions provided by a third party that was only doing that. For example, when you want to add payment to a web application, it's not easy. I mean, will you do the connection with the bank yourself, hosting the bank credit card and so on? No. You just use Stripe. It works out of the box. It takes like a day to integrate, and that's kind of magic. And he found the same thing for search with Algolia, or for text messages with Twilio and so on. So yeah, every time he met a technical challenge, he had this magical solution. But when he had to do the translation of the web app, he didn't find that magic. And he actually had to do a lot of the technical work, super time consuming by himself, which is rewriting the code, making sure URLs are working, having the button, making sure search engines will index, see, and rank the page, and so on. And it really took him a lot of time. And really the pain was coming from the technical part. On the content part, it was quite simple strings and sentences, so not that hard. And he spent a couple of years in the US, so he knows how to speak English better than me, probably. So yeah, it was coming from a technical pain point, and he thought there should be a magical solution just to help any web developers, website owner, to make a website multilingual in minutes. That's how he presented me the idea and what he was working on. And I was sold from day one. And so, okay, I don't know how to code. How can I help you? I'm going to find users, and we're going to see if it's working and people like it.
Yeah, so I was interested about that part, really. So you said, that's obviously the backstory to Remy's idea or concept behind Weglot, but what was it about the way that he pitched it, or the opportunity that really appealed to you? And then also tell us sort of since then, what's your journey been like? Any, major pivots or some of the key milestones you faced together?
We did not really pivot, to be very transparent. And actually the vision he had and he presented to me at this time is the same today. It's really about making this translation feature through this solution. So Weglot, our goal is that Weglot is the translation feature for website translation, and that's really how we see things today, and that's what that's how we saw things back then. But obviously, it was not like super linear and easy. So the first hard things was to find users. So how do we find people just using the product and understanding what they like, what they don't like? And we quickly found out that two things were super important. One is it has to be super easy to integrate. So at this time, there were no low-code, no-code trends. It was really about just, okay, I have a website. I'm not a technical engineer or a developer. How can I add your product to my website? So that was one thing super important. And the other one was, okay, it's working, but will search engines see the translated versions? So you can just do translations in the browser on the fly. Otherwise, search engines will not see it. So you will clearly cut yourself from a big benefits of having a website translated. So that was the two things, and it drove us to being first and finding traction inside the WordPress universe that you might know. As a content publisher, you might choose WordPress.
We're on WordPress.
Okay, so you're on WordPress. So we found our first traction in WordPress, and it worked really well. Then we did that also in another CMS, which is Shopify. So it's more online stores, e-commerce. And then we finally found out a solution that we were able to add to any website, regardless what technology they're using. So today, if you're using Shopify, Webflow, WordPress, or any other CMS, you can use Weglot super easily. And if you're even using a custom solution, it's also possible.
Let's talk about the funding you raised from a fund called Partech Growth. I think as we wrote, it was a 45 million round. So tell us a bit more about that. Like, what was this decision-making process behind like accelerating what you've already been doing through raising funds? And maybe like, was there a prior round you had, or was it bootstrapped up to then? Just give us a bit more kind of color on that.
Sure. So we started Weglot in 2016, and we did a small pre-seed or seed round of 450,000 euros in 2017. And since then, we didn't do any raising. And so we thought like maybe it was time to partner with new guys like Partech. The goal was for us to, two or threefold. One is let's find people who know how to support companies like us going from our stage of growth, which is like 10 million ARR, to the next one, 50, 100. Very tech-oriented, global positioning. And that's what they do. I mean, they really do this SaaS business with SMBs, with the type of companies with our level of growth. And so that was one. The other one is it was important for us to be able to take more risks now, not to transform ourselves into a cash burner, because I think we don't know how to do that, but maybe being more concurrent. So we have more resources to take the market and to penetrate even more the different markets we are already addressing and addressing new ones. And the last one is also hiring people. It's really about having a strong employer brand and having great talent to build new know-how we want to develop.
Just you mentioned people there. So where's the bulk of the staff located? Most in France? Or are you fully remote, or how's the team set up?
Most in France. I mean, only in France. We have 8 nationalities, but we're all in France, based in Paris. Some people of the team are based in other cities like me, but most of the team is based in Paris.
Cool. So let's talk about the client segments, right? So like, what type of clients have you attracted early on? Where's kind of your core base right now? And like, are you planning to go more kind of towards the enterprise side of things that are like very complex deployments, or really kind of that like SaaS layer, more kind of, no code layer now? Like, just talk us a bit through those client segments.
Sure. I mean, we're coming from a very self-service SMBs, small SMBs that we love market. And it worked, and it works very well. And we were only doing that until beginning of 2020. And beginning of 2020, we started to see more larger companies coming to us with larger needs, or they wanted to have someone to help them to understand the value of the product before they can eventually do a POC. And that's when we started the enterprise segment. And that's really about providing the same product with more usage or more needs and more service, but it's the same product. We really want to have this idea of we're offering a product, not a service. We're not LSPs. We're really a solution that helps you to make your website translated, but we're more partnering with LSPs. I mean, many of our customers are using professional translators with Weglot. And the goal is to keep doing that and to grow the two segments, the self-service part, SMBs, but also the enterprise one, and progressively going more and more into the enterprise. I mean, one thing they love is that the more they have technical depth, the easiest it's for us to be used, because we're kind of a layer or an infrastructure that you would plug in on top of what you have, and it's working out of the box.
And so this kind of low, no code movement thing, I mean, tell us, for those who aren't really super familiar, tell us like, when did it all kick off? What are some of the drivers? Has COVID had any kind of impact on the low, no code movement? And how does it all fit into the web localization universe?
It's very interesting. So when we started Weglot, like I said, there were no low-code, no-code words at this time. But what we had in mind is really about we need to minimize the time between the discovery of Weglot and the wow effect and the value we provide you. So we need to be very good at, when you start your signing process, you need to see translation versions of your website super fast. So removing friction with technical back and forth or anything like this was super important to us, and it's still super important to us. So that's one thing, and that's what you can call no code, low code, which is for us more, we are building complex things and taking the complexity for us, so it's super simple for our users. That's, I think, what is a low code, no code. And obviously it's really, it's highlighted and accelerated with COVID and with digitalization, of course. And more non-technical people are in charge and responsible of web applications, websites, and so on. And that's also another reason why such tools like us are relevant and more used. And the other thing is that we are actually at the crossroads of two pain points. One is super technical. So tomorrow, if I ask you, like, put your website in Spanish and Chinese, okay, so there is a technical part that's complex. And the other one is content. Okay, I don't speak Spanish and I don't speak Chinese, so the mountain is huge. So if we come to you with a solution that's helping you to do 80% of the work in a couple of minutes, it's huge value. And that's why it's, I think, also one of the reasons of our success, that it's super easy to immediately have 80% of the job done, so you can focus on the 20% part if you want.
And what about some of the kind of complexities of website localization? How do you deal with things like, I don't know, SEO? You mentioned sometimes there's an issue with, or there can be an issue with Google not recognizing the translated version of the website. What are some of the main challenges around that?
Yes, it's super important to us, and that's one of the first feedbacks we actually got when we started Weglot. And so we're good students. We read the Google documentation to understand what was important. And actually, so technically speaking, there are three things that you have in mind. One is having your translations on the server side. So it means that it's rendered by the server, and it's not only in your browser. For example, if you go as a visitor to a website and you see sometimes the browser is proposing you to switch the language, and you can switch it from English to French, for example, but it's only in a browser, so it's not in the source code. So that's one thing. The other one is having dedicated URLs. So you should have a dedicated URL to indicate Google that there are two versions of the page. So for example, you can use subdomains, mywebsite.com for English and fr.mywebsite.com for French. You can also use top-level domains or subdirectories. And the last point, it's super technical, I'm sorry, but and the last point is help Google know that there are different versions of your website. And there are two ways to do that. First is to have a sitemap, where it's basically a map, and it says there are different versions of your website. And the other one is to add hreflang tags. And both of them have the same purpose, which is let Google know that there is alternate versions in other languages of the page he's crawling.
Listen, people.
Yeah, I'm making notes as we go.
Listen and learn.
And we're doing that for you out of the box. Again, the goal is that it's easy for you. You can just focus on eventually iterate on your keywords or things like this, not on the technical part.
From the technical to the language part. So Weglot doesn't offer, like you guys don't offer the service of translation, right? So you're partnering with LSPs, or your clients would bring and onboard their own, whatever, freelancers or LSPs. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. I mean, our goal is to offer our users best resources to do their own translation workflow, quality, depending on their resources, the time they want, etc. So what we do is that by default, we offer machine translations. So they don't start from scratch. They can activate the display or not. They can change it or not. Then they can edit that themselves with their local teams or own translators, localization team, or they can invite their LSPs or freelancers they're working with to do the edit and the review. Or they can outsource part or all of their translations to professional translators, LSPs, that we're working with. Today, we're working with Textmaster. So Textmaster is it's a marketplace owned by Accolade. But it's also possible to do export and bring in your own LSPs if you want. Yeah, I mean, the goal for us is really to be able to help you, give you the resources so you can build the thing you want.
But they work, like the translators can work in Weglot itself, or like?
If they want. Today, we don't have a marketplace built inside Weglot, but what you can do, for example, you send an invite to your translator for a specific language. You can even assign translation to them, and they come into the account. They can review it. They can see it on the web page to have the context, do the translations, and you're notified when it's done, and it's live already on your website.
What's your customer's perception of machine translation? like in 2022? Because like there's probably like a wide variety. People think, well, it's basically a click and then it's done, and others maybe have a bit more of a nuanced understanding. But like,
Yeah, I think it really varies. It depends on use cases. For example, if you are an online e-commerce store and you have hundreds of thousands of products, it's not going to be possible to do manual human transitions. I mean, it's just not scalable and it's not ROI driven. So generally speaking, e-commerce tend to use machine translations by default and then iterate on most profitable or seen or most important pages. And then you also have, like, for example, another use case that could be corporate website with a marketing website that's really about the corporate voice and tone, and it's super important for them to have that in the different languages. And for them, machine translation can be a resource and tool, but they need to really validate and make sure it sticks to their constraint, which is good. I mean, again, we're not recommending anything ourselves. We're just letting them build what they want. And now going back to the perception of machine translation, I mean, mine, when I used Google Translate when I was in college, it was horrible. And it improved. So, I mean, I'm so impressed today with the quality it offers for some types of content. It's super impressive. It will never beat humans, for sure, but it's really a great tool.
absolutely.
I mean, thinking about sort of I think you mentioned you've got 8 different nationalities, but all based in France at the moment. I mean, how's it been in the past couple of years trying to hire and retain, engineering talent, tech talent? On the one hand, obviously, it's really competitive for talent at the moment, but also with COVID, I think makes life a bit more challenging as well.
I mean, it's challenging. I will not lie. But overall it went well. I think that also the mission and the opportunity is very interesting. I mean, we're building something that's used by 60,000 of websites around the world, and we have a unique opportunity to create a brand which could be the feature for translation for the web, which is, I think, quite exciting. We're using state-of-the-art cloud services, so it's also attracting engineers to join us. And yeah, I mean, also we're kind of picky, and we're not super good at anticipating. We try to improve ourselves, but we tend to wait until we're very under the water before starting a new job offer. It's changing, but so yeah, I mean, we were 30 people. I mean, so that's not a huge team. So I think it's less challenging than for other tech companies that have 400 people.
And hiring outside of France, potentially?
No.
Not yet.
No, for now, we prefer, since we're a small team, we think it's super important to share the culture. And we are not remote by default and from the very beginning, so we don't have really a culture that's super easy to, I think, to build and improve with a remote only environment. So for now, maybe it will change one day, but we hire in Paris and in France.
So it looks like when you started out, it was mostly technical roles. Like now with Partech on board and kind of a more aggressive, I would assume, marketing and sales strategy. Like, are you hiring more on that side of the business? And like generally, what's your marketing approach been, and where do you see it going now? Because you seem to have great success onboarding clients now through SEO and just other channels, right? But how is that going to change going forward, or double down?
Yeah, we're going to double down for sure. And also, I mean, that's okay, different things. First, we're also still hiring in technical positions. That's super important for us. And also in support, which is a mix of technical and business. On the marketing and sales part, in sales, we're also hiring technical people because sometimes it's important. But double down what we're doing. Also, I mean, the exciting thing is that we're discovering more and more usage over time. I mean, for example, we're getting traction with, for example, local governments or governments' websites, which is, I mean, they have a big challenges to be accessible and to be translation compliant with their own policies and so. So that's a new use case. So we need people to just be able to absorb the demand. So it's really about absorbing the demand and also building the road to market and double down on what's working. The new things we want to build is probably being able to build a greater brand awareness inside marketing communities, inside localization people communities, inside these types of communities that are less technical than the one we were used to talk to in the past.
Got it. About growth in general. So now you're really super firmly in this kind of web ecosystem, you know, with the WordPress you mentioned, and I think Shopify. Are you planning to add, or have you added other kind of web, whatever, for lack of a better word, other ecosystems or CMSs like Sitecore? And then like beyond that, what could be growth areas, or you're happy with web generally?
Okay, so one day maybe we could do mobile, native mobile app, but for now, it's a logic that's a bit different. I mean, the way we're doing translations for websites, it's really real-time, synchronous, and native mobile app are not in real time by nature. So it's another play. So for now, we think that the market is super large. I mean, the web application and website market is very, very large. So we should just focus on keep improving the product. Really, I mean, we're focusing on solving these pains and trying to offer the best solution for that. And as long as we have room to increase our market share and being more present, we will first focus on that. And then maybe one day we'll do something else.
I mean, and you say it's a large market. What's your outlook in terms of, you know, growth and trends and drivers for web localization?
So for us, I mean, again, we are the crossroad of translations, localizations, and websites. So there are more than 1 billion domain name registered, and it's growing. And I think that the web translation, I mean, the online and web pages in the translation industry is growing. So there are more and more demand for these types of format. So yeah, I think we're on two super great current that are in the right direction, and yeah, I don't have a specific number. I could say okay, it's a 50 billion USD market probably, but I think it's a large market that is growing, which is exciting.
To close, tell us the top 2-3 things that are on your roadmap for the next, 12, 18 months. Features, additions, new things, anything you can disclose or want to keep it on the wraps?
I mean, I can already disclose things that are either in beta or about to be launched. First is we're having a new integration with Squarespace that help Squarespace users to easily use us inside the admin product of Squarespace. So they can just activate with us inside that. The other one is we just released a super exciting feature for us. I don't know if you will share this excitement, but it's we can now translate variables inside Weglot. It means that customer X buys N product. Now it's just one string, and it's not N strings, for example. And the last one is we really want Weglot to be this translation infrastructure. So it's important for us to be able to offer the maximum of flexibility to our users. And it means in terms of URLs, they can play with URLs. So for example, they can have subdirectories that could be /fr, but if they want, they could be /fr -be for Belgium. So they can have a local or regional versions of their language if they want. And that's something that we're working on, and that will hopefully be ready this year.
I got a Squarespace site I can play around with. I'll check it out. I'll check it out when it appears there. So Cool. All right, Augustin, thank you so much for doing this. This was really, really interesting, and good luck to you with all that, the new partnership with Partech and your plans. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, guys. Happy to be with you.